abájọrò kì í pẹ́ kú, ohun àṣepọ̀ nílẹ̀yẹ, ẹ̀yìn ọ̀la wa ti dára ọ́, àwa Èkìtì àti parapọ̀, ká parapọ̀ ká tún bá mú pọ̀, àwa Èkìtì àti gómìnira ọ̀kan làwa ń ṣe. Èkìtì Èkìtì tí gbòmìnira, Èkìtì Èkìtì tí gbòmìnira, àwa Èkìtì iwájú la ó máa lọ lágbára Ọlọ́run, àwa Èkìtì ọ̀kan ṣoṣo máa ní wá o láéláé.
Ado-Ekiti. It is exactly 4 weeks since we commenced the stay-at-home and dusk-to-dawn curfew as part of the actions to curb the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic in Ekiti State. Whilst we have recorded some significant success, the situation has also thrown up a new set of challenges that necessitates that we take stock, review, and recommit ourselves to the goal of keeping our state coronavirus-free. I want to acknowledge the difficult sacrifices we have all made by observing the lockdown in the last 4 weeks. Though I must say, some residents refused to comply and many were apprehended and prosecuted to act as a deterrent to others. That collective sacrifice has resulted in the slow rate of infection, but it has been devastating for the state and individual family economies. As a nation, we have also come to realize that we need a collective strategy to combat this pandemic effectively. That is why the Nigerian Governors Forum, under my leadership, jointly agreed to coordinate the state government's response to COVID-19 along 5 general guidelines as follows. A. Lockdown of all interstate boundaries except for essential movements of food, medical, pharmaceutical, beverages, petroleum products, agricultural products, and construction industry. B. Aviation and airport lockdown. Relaxation of internal movements within the states based on each state's assessment of their individual situation. D. Enforcement of the ban on large gatherings, including religious, social, educational, and political events. And E. Mandate and enforcement of the compulsory wearing of face masks if there is a need to go out. These measures have become necessary in view of the fact that interstate travel from the main epicenters of the outbreak have been responsible for the index cases of infection in many states, including here in our own state, Ekiti. A coordinated restriction on interstate travel is thus expected to reduce the spread significantly with a view to quickly bringing the pandemic under control. Ado-Ekiti, it is the desire of government that normal life and business activities be restored immediately in view of the economic pressure and loss of livelihood for many of our people who are self-employed. However, the enemy we face is so deadly that we must prioritize the safety of lives, health, and well-being of our people over other considerations. After all, to quote the words of the President of Ghana, Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, we know how to bring the economy back to life. What we do not know is how to bring people back to life. We must therefore proceed with caution to ensure we do not lose all the advantages we have gained from the sacrifice of the past 4 weeks. The scientists tell us that while Nigeria has succeeded in keeping confirmed infection numbers relatively low, we're still a few months away from the projected peak of the pandemic. That means we're not out of the woods yet. So in reviewing the lockdown, our actions must be cautious gradual, deliberate, and very firm. More importantly, they must be as advised by the medical and scientific experts at the front line of this battle. And that is why, after careful deliberation with the task force on the impacts and gains of the last 4 weeks, and in view of the sudden spike in our confirmed cases from a total of 4 to 8, with 5 active cases at the weekend, we cannot totally lift the lockdown without endangering Ekiti residents. I have therefore decided that we shall proceed cautiously as follows. 1. Dusk to dawn curfew. There shall now be a renewal of our dusk to dawn curfew, which shall be between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. every day of the week until further notice. No movement of vehicle or human traffic whatsoever is allowed except for verified medical emergencies. 2. There is going to be a 6-day lockdown extension. The current lockdown directive, which ends today, Monday, April 27th, at 11:59 hours, is hereby extended for another 6 days until 23:59 hours on Sunday, May 3rd, 2020. All conditions and exemptions remain in force during the extension. Fresh orders. Starting from Monday, May 4th, 2020, limited resumption. Business activities will resume for only 3 days a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, from the hours of 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. only, to allow the self-employed and some income to feed their families and not wait solely on government for palliatives. Citizens must, however, observe social distancing, hand washing, and wearing of masks at all times. Businesses must provide liquid soap and running water for hand washing, while supermarkets should not have more than 10 persons at any time in their store. A more detailed guidelines will be made public after this broadcast. Businesses that do not comply will be shut down for 6 months. 2. Stay-at-home directive. Restriction of movement will be enforced 4 days a week: Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Only essential services, including food, medical, beverages, petroleum, banks, agriculture, construction, and select media and telecommunications, are exempt from the restriction. Violators will be prosecuted and may be fined or imprisoned. Continued ban on large gatherings. All large gatherings remain banned. No religious, social, political, or educational gathering will be allowed to hold in Ekiti State until the pandemic is brought under control. Any facility that violates this directive may be shut down for not less than 12 months. 4. Boundary lockdown. All travel from and into Ekiti State are hereby banned, as all boundaries of Ekiti State will be on lockdown 24 hours daily. Only food, medical, beverages, petroleum, agricultural, and construction supply trucks are exempted, but they cannot have more than 3 persons per truck. Any vehicle caught in violation may be forfeited to the state and passengers prosecuted. 5. Compulsory face masks. Wearing of face mask is now compulsory in Ekiti State. Everyone must wear a face mask when going out of the home, so you don't spread the virus to others. Residents are advised to make their own masks, while government will provide masks for essential duty workers only. Guidelines on how to make them will be provided. Reusable fabric masks that can be washed after every use is appropriate. Face masks will be strictly enforced on the streets, so if you cannot wear a face mask, stay at home, as you may be arrested and prosecuted for willfully endangering public health. 6. Intracity commercial transportation. Commercial transportation will be allowed to operate on Mondays, on Wednesdays, and Fridays from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. Only on condition that they comply with strict social distancing directives. Okadas can only carry 1 passenger. Tricycles not more than 2 passengers. And taxis not more than 3 passengers. Any driver who violates this directive will be arrested, prosecuted, and may forfeit the vehicle or cycle to the government. If mass violation occurs, commercial transportation will be completely banned indefinitely. Interstate travel is hereby restricted. Visits to or from Ekiti State is prohibited while the pandemic subsists. Insistent visitors must be prepared to be turned back or kept in our border town quarantine centers for 14 days minimum and shall be responsible for their own upkeep. Any private or commercial driver caught violating this directive will be arrested and prosecuted and may forfeit the vehicle to Ekiti State. 8. Major markets remain closed. All major markets, including Ojaoba, Ojabisi, Shasha, and major local government market days remain closed every day of the week. Residents are advised to patronize the neighborhood markets or sell their wares from home. Violators will be arrested, prosecuted, and may forfeit their goods to the state government or have their stores shut down for 6 months, even after the pandemic is contained. Public service resumption. In line with the directives, only officers in the following categories may report at their desk on authorized days and scrupulously adhere to the rules of social distancing. A. Level 13 and above. B. Officers rendering essential services. C. Administrative officers. D. Others as required by the accounting officers responsible in their MDA. Palliatives. The Ekiti State Food Bank has distributed food packs to over 40,000 households across the 16 local government areas in the last 1 month. While we acknowledge that this is insufficient in a total lockdown, with a partial release of 3 days a week, most people should have the opportunity to work to feed their family. Food bank distribution will continue to support the very vulnerable amongst us throughout this extraordinary period, as we receive donations in cash and kind to help the needy. COVID-19 testing. We are working very hard to get a test center in Ekiti State as soon as possible. This will help us increase random community testing so we can isolate the infection early and remove from circulation to prevent more infections. Our aim is to test at least 10,000 persons between now and June. Communications and sensitization. We will increase our enlightenment and communications to ensure the public understand what to do to protect their families and prevent the transmission of the deadly virus. Feedback channels like the new COVID-19 hub, www.covid19.ekitisstate.gov.ng, are also available to all residents to reach the task force if there is a suspected case in your neighborhood. Security. we shall continue to strengthen the safety and security structures across the state to protect law-abiding citizens. Special focus will be given to all boundary communities in the state to strictly enforce restricted access into Ekiti State. Local government chairmen and traditional rulers of such communities must assume responsibility for strict compliance, especially on back roads or bush paths, as we cannot afford another slip that could import the virus into the state. As we were preparing for the end of the current lockdown, we had the unfortunate abduction of the Commissioner for Agriculture. We received the disturbing report that Ekiti State Commissioner for Agriculture, Chief Folorunsho Olabode, and some others were abducted by unknown gunmen yesterday evening on his way to Ado-Ekiti, where he lives, and one person was shot. The unfortunate incident is already getting necessary action by the security agencies with a directive to secure their safe release. As we are all aware, we have been free of the threat of kidnapping in Ekiti State for some time now. And I want to assure you that this recent attempt will be promptly and firmly resisted. We cannot allow the fear of insecurity to compound our current struggle against a public health crisis. These are trying times in the history of mankind that requires us all to be sober, alert, and circumspect in order to protect ourselves, family, state, and nation from being overwhelmed by an invisible but merciless virus that is wreaking havoc across the whole world. We must strike a delicate balance between protecting lives and upholding fundamental human rights. We must remember that where our rights end is where other people's rights begin. So we must consider the safety of other Nigerians as important as our own safety. We cannot be selfish or self-centered in our personal choices. We are all in this together, and we must win this battle together. These facts informed all the measures outlined in this address, so we can avoid further damage to the already weakened economic architecture of our state. We shall continue to monitor the situation, and if there is any reason to review these measures, we shall not hesitate to do so, because our primary duty is to keep Ekiti people safe and secure. An expanded executive order for all these directives will be signed into law after this address to empower law enforcement agencies to ensure maximum compliance. I thank you for your cooperation and compliance. Alale Ekiti, Agbe Alekeo.
Ohun abájọ́rò kì í pẹ́ kú, ohun àṣepọ̀ nílẹ̀yẹ, ẹ̀yìn ọ̀la wa ti dára ọ́, àwa Èkìtì àti parapọ̀, ká parapọ̀ ká tún bá mú pọ̀, àwa Èkìtì àti gómìnira ọ̀kan làwa ń ṣe. Èkìtì, Èkìtì tí gbòmìnira, Èkìtì, Èkìtì tí gbòmìnira, àwa Èkìtì iwájú la ó máa lọ lágbára Ọlọ́run, àwa Èkìtì ọ̀kan ṣoṣo mà ni wá o.